Now we'll study the scope of anthropology. What do you mean by scope? See first question, 2021. Elaborate the scope of anthropology. It was given for 20 marks. Right? So, and you see linguistic anthropology, archaeological anthropology, social and cultural anthropology were all given 10 marks. So what is the scope of anthropology? What do you mean by scope of anthropology? Yes, what anthropology actually studies, what dimensions it explores. So this scope was given by Franz Boas. He classified into 4. Tell me. Socio-cultural anthropology, biological, archaeological, linguistic. What do we study in socio-cultural anthropology? What do we study? Society, culture. We study society, we study culture. What culture we study? What are the aspects of culture we study? What are the specific aspects of culture we study? You need to memorize the syllabus first. Do it today after going home. What are the cultural institutions we study? We study 2.1 culture, 2.2, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, marriage, family, kinship. Yes. We study all these aspects. What are the culture, how cultural changes are occurring, and what are the factors that are causing these changes. Right? How family is being factors of modern education, feminism, how are they influencing the family kinship organizations? What are the social structures? Economics, yes. We study primitive societies, economic organization of primitive societies, modern societies, rural societies, urban societies, tribal societies. How are they changing with the advent of modern democratic institutions like PRI, local self-governments? So we study both static part, dynamic part. How societies vary in social structures. Right? So here we mix all the chapters again. Chapter 6, 7, 8. So what do we study in biological anthropology? Bit louder. Next generation. How man was born? Just like that, suddenly one day. Suddenly one day. How a man was born, tell me. Biological process. Really? How? So we study the evolution of man from apes, from primates, right? The biological evolution. We study the fossils, primate fossils, hominid ancestors, the time periods when they were originated, how they came out. Like we have out of Africa theory, how Homo sapiens came from Africa to spread to other regions, how Neanderthals came. So human evolution we study, fossils we study in this biological anthropology, and we study genetics. How DNA replicates, how protein synthesis occurs, why people differ. We study races, why people differ genetically. What are the factors of evolution? What are the factors of evolution? Mutation, inbreeding, natural selection, Mendelian genetics, population genetics, genetic markers. This is just an overview of the syllabus. Okay. You will get handy with these terms as we enter into the topics. This is just a brief overview. You need not write everything, whatever I am speaking. See, at the end of the completion of paper 1, you will get a brief understanding of every topic. So just pick and write here. You'll get 20 marks of each and everything. Just an overview. Right? We studied Darwinism, synthetic theory, forensic anthropology, applications of anthropology, how we apply the biological principles in anthropology, sports anthropology. You know, there are sports anthropologists as well. How anthropology helps in sports? See, they tell you what kind of a body type is suitable for what kind of a sport. They classify these body types into 3 categories. So such a person who falls in that category, he is suitable for certain types of games, sports. He'll get a superior performance. Now India want medals, right? So, and we study also forensic anthropology. What is forensic anthropology? We take the principles of forensic science and we apply. So what is forensic anthropology? What do you think we study there in forensic anthropology? Paternity issues. Who is the father? And identification of victim, facial reconstruction. Based on the bones, we'll try to find out the age of that person, the time of death of that person, the gender of that person. Right? We have see, this anthropology is holistic and very interesting. So, archaeological anthropology, what do we study here? Remains. What remains? Bone remains, clay remains, artifacts. So what we'll study from that? See, we will get material artifacts. We'll study them, we'll date them, chronological dating and relative dating methods we use. We'll try to find out to which period these artifacts belong to. And we have a subfield called ethnoarchaeology. Based on this, we try to figure out what is the application of that tool in that period. We study ethnoarchaeology in paper 2, 1.3. But this is in paper 1. Right? And we also study our bone remains, how culture evolved, how culture diffused, all through. Only thing is, we can study majorly material aspects in archaeological anthropology because we don't know how people behaved then. We don't know, now only we don't know how people are behaving these days. How can we? So in linguistic anthropology, what do we study? Language? What language? What are you studying about language? What do you study? Language? What they use? Okay, origin of language. When the language was originated. Why languages are different for different cultures? Do you know language influence culture? Example, please. Okay, give me example. How language influence culture? Or how culture influence language? Anything is fine. How language influence culture? How culture influence language?
Based on the culture and the language.
Because you love your language, so you want a separate state. Ante kada, dalo emundi. See, for example, I'll say, if I'm telling you, ఇప్పుడు లాంగ్వేజ్ ఉంది, లాంగ్వేజ్ నీ కల్చర్ని ఎలా ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్స్ చేస్తుంది? ఇప్పుడు వాట్ షీ సెడ్, యూ లవ్ యువర్ లాంగ్వేజ్, సో నువ్వు హౌ యూ ఫీల్ అంటే వేరే వాళ్ళ లాంగ్వేజ్ వచ్చి నా ఇంపోజ్ చేస్తున్నారు, సో మేబీ నా లాంగ్వేజ్ పోవచ్చు, ఎక్స్టింక్ట్ అయిపోవచ్చు, సో ఐ వాంట్ ఎ సెపరేట్ స్టేట్ విత్ మై పీపుల్. వాట్ లాంగ్వేజ్ ఇస్ ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్సింగ్? ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్సింగ్ వాట్? What is a cultural aspect there? You are demanding state. What is a cultural aspect there? If I say If I say to a boy who is crying, don't cry like a girl, what does that mean? Only girls cry in that culture. Men don't cry. Yes or no? Have you ever heard, you're a girl, stay in your limits? Your culture influences the way you use certain terminology. It's a very famous jargon, no? Don't cry like a girl. Yes or no? What does that mean? Women are weak in that culture. Whenever a problem comes, women cry. That is the implicit meaning of that culture gives you. We don't know. Subconsciously, that is what ingrained in that culture, that what culture teaches you. So language influences culture. There is an example, famous example, that it seems that there are some factory workers sitting there just chit-chatting during the afternoon session. So there are certain tanks, gasoline tanks. So it was written that there is no gasoline, empty tanks, empty gasoline tanks. Do you think when it was written empty, does it అంటే కొంచెం ట్రేస్ కూడా ఉండదా గ్యాసోలిన్ ఎంటీ అయిన తర్వాత ఎంతో కొంత ఉంటుంది కదా? హౌ దట్ అక్కడ వర్కర్స్ ఏం అర్థమైంది అంటే దే స్టార్టెడ్ స్మోకింగ్. ఓకే ఎంటీ రాసింది కదా, ఇట్స్ ఎంటీ, అండ్ దే స్టార్టెడ్ థ్రోయింగ్ దోస్ లెఫ్ట్ ఓవర్స్. దానివల్ల ఒక మేజర్ యాక్సిడెంట్ అయింది ఆ ఇండస్ట్రీలో. సో లాంగ్వేజ్ అనేది నీ బిహేవియర్ని కూడా ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్స్ చేస్తుంది. That is called Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. We'll study in chapter 7. No need to study here. I'm just telling you, just giving you a brief overview. You can write answer to this question even without studying it after completing anthropology. Majority of the questions you can write like that, just by applying knowledge. See, culture is a way of life. Whatever we do, we talk, we marry, we behave.
Moral aspect is like culture.
Culture is what we are, the way of living. Okay? So this is linguistic anthropology. When language was born, when it developed, variations, and how it is influencing culture, right? So take notes. Franz Boas heading పెట్టారు కదా, scope of anthropology. Franz Boas divided anthropology into 4 subfields. Franz Boas divided anthropology into 4 subfields. Socio-cultural anthropology. Socio-cultural anthropology studies socio-cultural anthropology studies socio-cultural evolution and variation. Studies socio-cultural evolution and variation. It studies institutions like evolution and variation. It studies institutions like marriage, family, kinship, It studies marriage, family, kinship, economic and political organizations of different cultures, using different methods like comparative method and fieldwork method. comparative method, and fieldwork method. Next one, biological anthropology or physical anthropology. Biological anthropology or physical anthropology. It studies origin and development of species, origin and development of species, origin and development of species, biological evolution and variation. Theories like Darwinism, synthetic theory, rules like Gauss rule, processes like microevolution, are studied. Concepts like race, population genetics, genetic adaptation mechanisms. Concepts like race, population genetics, and genetic adaptation mechanisms were explored. Archaeological anthropology. It studies archaeological anthropology. It studies evolution of material culture, with the help of excavation of artifacts. Evolution of material culture with the help of excavation of artifacts. Linguistic anthropology. It studies origin, evolution. It studies origin, evolution, and variation in languages. It focuses on studying languages. It focuses on studying languages which do not have script. Studying languages which do not have script. Test the theories of language test the theories of language like Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. It tests the theories of language like Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. The last topic of chapter 1.1, development of anthropology. T.K. Penniman, in his book 100 Years of Anthropology, he gave 4 stages of development of anthropology. Formulatory stage, convergent, constructive, and critical. This is before 1835. So in formulatory stage, there is no such discipline called anthropology. There are studies which are similar to anthropological nature conducted by Greek and Roman scholars like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. What did they study? What are the studies of anthropological nature? Acha, you did not study ethics, right? Okay. They started studying about nature of people, the nature of state, how people behave, politics, economics, everything. But as such, anthropology as a discipline is not existing. Just vaguely the philosophers started undertaking such studies. This happened in formulatory phase before 1835. And next phase is convergent phase. It started with 1835. So, in this phase, people started studying social structures. People started studying societies. So this stage it started with Auguste Comte, who coined the term sociology. So sociological studies were started in this convergent phase. There is nothing to explain, just listen. Next, in the constructive phase, so what happened? In 1859, this is a phenomenal year. 1859, because Charles Darwin, he went to a voyage of the Beagle Island. There he started developing this theory of organic evolution, how man evolved, what are the reasons. So he wrote his book Origin of Species. So then biological evolutionary studies started. Along with that, parallelly, thinkers started cultural evolution studies. So here we get chapter 6, evolutionist school of thought. They belong to this constructive phase. E.B. Tylor, L.H. Morgan. We'll discuss about them in detail in chapter 6. Okay? And even fieldwork started in constructive phase. It was in the initial stages. The fieldwork was started by Franz Boas. So that was just a starting phase. So he went to British Columbia. He started collecting more data about those people. Next comes critical phase. In critical phase, functionalists dominated. Functionalist. These people started synchronic studies, the function of a culture, Radcliffe Brown, and extensive fieldwork was conducted during this phase. Radcliffe Brown, he visited Andaman Islands. He studied the practices, cultures of that area. And Malinowski, Trobriand Island. He visited Trobriand Island. There he also started participant observation method. He gave principles of participant observation method. And he became the father of economic anthropology. He started important studies in economic anthropology. Right. After 1920s, now anthropology shifted its focus on village studies, caste. Especially in India, it was caste, but in US and all, they started the civilization studies, folk and folk cultures, peasant cultures were studied. So there is nothing to explain, just take notes. T.K. Penniman, right, development of anthropology. T.K. Penniman, in his book, 100 Years of Anthropology. 100 Years of Anthropology. In his book, 100 Years of Anthropology, has divided development of anthropology into 4 phases. In his book, 100 Years of Anthropology has divided development of anthropology into 4 phases. Formulatory phase, formulatory phase before 1835. Before 1835. Include the studies of anthropological nature, studies of anthropological nature conducted by ancient Greece and Roman thinkers, like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Next, convergent phase. Convergent phase, 1835 to 1859. Different perspectives of society. Different perspectives of society were developed. Different perspectives of society were developed with the coining of the term sociology by Auguste Comte. The coining of the term sociology by Auguste Comte. Next, constructive phase, 1859 to 1900. (1859) is a landmark year. 1859 is a landmark year as Charles Darwin published his works Voyage of the Beagle, Voyage of Beagle, and Origin of Species. And Origin of Species. Theories of biological and cultural evolution developed. Theories of biological and cultural evolution developed. Classical evolutionist like E.B. Tylor, classical evolutionist like E.B. Tylor and L.H. Morgan suggested that the culture develops in a unilinear and sequential manner. The culture develops in a unilinear and sequential manner. In 1884, anthropology was recognized. Anthropology was recognized as a separate discipline. Anthropology was recognized as a separate discipline by Oxford University. In 1898, Torres Strait Expedition was led by W.H.R. Rivers. Torres Strait Expedition was led by W.H.R. Rivers, the first systematic fieldwork in anthropology. The first systematic fieldwork in anthropology. Next, critical phase, 1900 to 1935. Critical phase, 1900 to 1935. Radcliffe Brown, studied Onge tribe. Radcliffe Brown studied Onge tribe of Andaman Islands. Radcliffe Brown studied Onge tribe of Andaman Islands and developed structural functionalism. and developed structural functionalism. With emphasis on social structure and institutions. With emphasis on social structure and institutions. Malinowski. Conducted field work. Malinowski conducted field work among Trobriand Islanders. Malinowski conducted field work among Trobriand Islanders and developed participant observation method. It also led to the emergence of cultural functionalism and economic anthropology. Post 1920, the studies on peasant society started inspired by Robert Redfield. Concepts like little tradition, great tradition, folk urban continuum emerged. Concepts like little tradition, great tradition, folk urban continuum emerged. The scope of anthropology extended expanded beyond tribal societies. Right, that's the end of chapter 1.1. Any questions? Any questions so far? You need to memorize these thinkers. You'll find these thinkers entire anthropology, paper 1 and paper 2. Okay? And these concepts are also very important. You get 10 markers. So what I want from you, please read this chapter. I'll bring my PYQ sheet. Tomorrow I'll ask you questions and you have to answer me. All these answers to the questions are given to you. right? I don't see, there are no direct questions, there are no unique features, there are no significance, but the answers are there. From 1.1. Do you want me to start 1.2? Just an introduction we'll have, because we have time. Any questions in chapter 1.1? So far, so clear? Chalo, 1.2, we'll have an introduction. Relationship with other disciplines. Social sciences, behavioral sciences, life sciences, medical sciences, earth sciences and humanities. See the questions. See, 9th question, how do you situate anthropology in social sciences? Differentiate between social anthropology and sociology. That is 10th question A. See, all these are majorly 10 markers. They can ask you, and 10 markers are compulsory, you have to. There is no choice in that. You have to answer these questions. So, okay, before going to 1.2, just give me a brief summary of 1.1. What we have studied in 1.1. What we studied in 1.1? What is 1.1 first? 3 broad topics, right? Okay, what we studied in that? Meaning of anthropology. So, your own meaning. Anthropological definition. Anthropological thinker's definition. Right? Next. Features of anthropology and significance. Okay. Next. Scope. And see, don't confuse. In paper 2 we have development of Indian anthropology. This is just anthropology. While answering, just be careful which question he asked. There are differences. Development of anthropology and development of Indian anthropology. Okay. So now we'll have 1.2. Relationship with social sciences. What are social sciences? What are social sciences? Sociology, yes. History. Psychology? No, that is behavioral science. What did you study in your geography textbook in 10th class? Civics, economics, politics, right? So, social sciences. Sorry, I said geography. It's a social textbook, right? What are social sciences? History, sociology, politics or polity, economics. Now tell me, difference between sociology and anthropology. See, now when we are studying this, we'll divide the answer in such a way that first we'll read similarities, then differences, and we'll end with how both the disciplines are actually helping each other, an interdisciplinary method. So tell me, how it varies with sociology. What is the difference between sociology and anthropology? I think you might be in doubt, right? Before joining anthropology, whether to join sociology or anthropology. No? So why you decided to join anthropology, leaving sociology? That means you know what is sociology. Tell me the difference between sociology and anthropology. Where anthropology. So you say anthropology is holistic.
some
Okay.
colleges like that.
Any more differences?
Only single phase. Only studying the social features only.
Okay, one component. This is atomistic, that is holistic. This is a part science, we can call it. Sociology as a part science, okay. Anything?
Social science now, అంటే ఇప్పటి గురించి అవుతారు ఇంపార్టెంట్.
Contemporary.
Anthropology ఏమో past, present
Yes, modern societies. Sociology studies modern societies and anthropology studies prehistoric, historic and modern. And what kind of societies sociology studies and what kind of societies anthropology studies? What kind of societies anthropology studies, boys? What different kinds of societies we study? Wait, boys. Application of knowledge. What kind of societies we study? Do we study rural society in anthropology? No. Yes. What we study in rural society? Did I say that we study caste? Caste is a important feature of a village. So we do study villages. And do we study urban societies? How? What do we study? Yes. Next. Do we study tribal societies? So which societies do we focus more in anthropology? Rural, urban or tribal? Yes, primitive societies. Okay, and subject matter wise, you said sociology studies modern, primarily modern societies and especially rural and urban societies. Next. What are the sources of data collection in sociology and anthropology? Both are studying societies, so both collect data. They vary in data collection. Anthropology? Field work. Sociology? Sociology also uses field work technique. Field work. See, data we have two types. Primary source of data collection and secondary source of data collection. In primary source of data collection, where the observer directly goes there and he'll fetch the information, that what we call as field work. In secondary sources, we take already written records or any travel diaries we'll take. Here sociology and anthropology both uses field work, but the techniques they employ are different. What is the field work technique used in anthropology? Yes, participant observation. In sociology, they use questionnaire method and schedule method. Questionnaire and schedule. What is questionnaire and schedule? They'll just print some questions and they'll send to people and they ask them to answer. Surveys చేస్తారు కదా, కొన్ని క్వశ్చన్స్ ఇచ్చి మార్క్ చేసి మళ్ళీ పంపించమంటారు. దట్ ఈస్ క్వశ్చనర్. వాట్ ఈస్ సర్వే? సర్వే ఆల్సో సేమ్ క్వశ్చనర్లానే ఉంటుంది, బట్ ఇక్కడ ఆన్సర్స్ ఫిల్ చేసేది మాత్రం అబ్జర్వర్, అంటే మీన్ ద పర్సన్ హూ ప్రిపేర్డ్ దట్. What is the difference between questionnaire and this schedule is, there are certain societies, illiterate majorగా మనం primitive societiesని చదువుతాం. They don't know how to fill because they are illiterate. So ఏమవుతుంది అంటే, he'll take the questions, he'll ask that questions and he will fill it by himself because they don't know how to write answers, right? So sociologists used primarily fieldwork methodsలో questionnaire and schedule methods యూస్ చేస్తారు. ఆంథ్రోపాలజిస్ట్ మేజర్లీ మిగతా మెథడ్స్ కూడా యూజ్ చేస్తాడు, బట్ ప్రైమసీ విల్ గివ్ టు పార్టిసిపెంట్ అబ్జర్వేషన్. సో దోస్ టూ ఆర్ ద డిఫరెన్సెస్. మేజర్ డిఫరెన్సెస్ కమ్ అండర్ సబ్జెక్ట్ మ్యాటర్ అండ్ ఫీల్డ్ వర్క్ టెక్నిక్స్. రెస్ట్ ఆఫ్ ద సేమ్ ఓవర్లాప్ అవుతుంది. ఈవెన్ సోషియాలజీ ఆల్సో స్టడీస్ ఫ్యామిలీ, మ్యారేజ్, కిన్షిప్ సిస్టమ్స్, రైట్? So that's why there is so much of overlap with socio-cultural anthropology and sociology. So sometimes we call sociology as comparative anthropology, right? Next, what is the difference with history? First tell me the similarities. What is history? Past. Which past? Ever since man was born, when man was a monkey, do we have any record of that? That is also past, right? But we don't have any record of it. What is history?
ఆర్కియాలజీ అండ్ హిస్టరీ అనేది మనకి ఆర్కియాలజీలో మనకి డిస్క్రిప్షన్స్లో దొరికే రిమైన్స్ మనకి చదవదని హిస్టరీ.
ఆర్కియాలజీ అంటే వాట్ ఈస్ హిస్టరీ? వై డూ వీ కాల్ ప్రీ హిస్టరీ అండ్ వై డూ వీ కాల్ హిస్టరీ?
ఎవిడెన్స్ లేని హిస్టరీ.
There are no written records. The period and the events ఎక్కడైతే రిటర్న్ రికార్డ్స్ ఉంటాయో విచ్ ఇట్ కవర్స్, దట్ ఈస్ హిస్టరీ. ఇట్ కవర్స్ ద క్రోనలాజికల్ ఈవెంట్స్ విచ్ హ్యావ్ అ రిటర్న్ రికార్డ్స్. రెస్ట్ ఆఫ్ దట్ కమ్స్ అండర్ ప్రీ హిస్టరీ. ఆ ప్రీ హిస్టరీని డీకోడ్ చేయడానికి వి యూజ్ ఆర్కియాలజీ, రైట్? చలో, సో సిమిలారిటీస్. టెల్ మీ ద సిమిలారిటీస్ బిట్వీన్ హిస్టరీ అండ్ anthropology. Yes, both study the past, true. And what? Yeah, actually what happens is these days there are no strict lines for every discipline. All the disciplines are taking the principles of other disciplines. They are following an interdisciplinary method. See, for example, history doesn't have any record of it. How anthropology helps history is that it fills the gaps. There are certain artifacts. We found certain artifact in anthropology. What it will do, it will conduct archaeology, ethnographic studies. They will come out with a function of that sword. ఒక స్వర్డ్ దొరికింది, ఆ స్వర్డ్కి ఇది ఫంక్షన్ అని చెప్తే, దెన్ హిస్టరీలో ఎక్కడైతే ఒక వార్ జరిగింది అది ఎలా జరిగిందో తెలీదు, విత్ స్టిక్స్ ఆర్ విత్ ఎనీ అదర్ డేటింగ్ చేస్తారు కదా, రిలేటివ్ డేటింగ్ ఆర్ క్రోనోమెట్రిక్ డేటింగ్ చేసినప్పుడు ఆ స్వర్డ్ యొక్క ఏజ్ తెలుస్తుంది. హిస్టరీలో ఆ ఏజ్కి ఆ కింగ్ ఆ ప్లేస్ అని తెలుస్తుంది కదా. సో అప్పుడు ఆ వార్ ఈ స్వర్డ్ని బట్టి చేశారు కాబట్టి, ప్రిమిటివ్ స్వర్డ్ కాబట్టి విన్ అవ్వలేదు అనే గ్యాప్స్ని ఫిల్ చేస్తాం. బోత్ రీఇన్ఫోర్స్ ఈచ్ అదర్. హౌ హిస్టరీ హెల్ప్స్ anthropology and anthropology helps history. Same way sociology also. Now sociology also started studies on primitive societies. Sociology is also using participant observation technique developed by anthropology. This what you will write in the conclusion for a 10 marker. This is the structure of the question. First you write similarities, differences, how both are reinforcing. And today we are following an interdisciplinary method. That's it. We will conclude. Chalo. In history, if you have to speak about the differences, in history you will study from past to present. You will say ancient history, medieval, modern. But in archaeology, anthropology, you'll start with the present and you'll dig into the past. Today's, it's called. So just write differences between sociology and anthropology first. We'll continue with the rest. Give new heading to the chapter. Leave a page so that you can make value additions. Now we are starting 1.2, chapter 1.2. Relationship with other disciplines. Comparison with sociology. Similarities. Sociology is very close to socio-cultural anthropology. Sociology is very close to socio-cultural anthropology, such that anthropology is called comparative sociology. Anthropology is called comparative sociology. Both disciplines study marriage, kinship, family, marriage, kinship, family, and other cultural institutions. Differences. Sociologists deal with rural and urban communities. Sociologists deal with rural and urban communities, while anthropologists deal with tribal communities. While anthropologists deal with tribal communities. Sociology uses secondary sources of data, and fieldwork techniques like schedule and questionnaire. While anthropologists rely on participant observation. While anthropologists rely on participant observation. Next, comparison with history. Comparison with history. History gives the account of time period. Where written records are available. History gives the account of time period where written records are available. Similarities. Both history and anthropology describes human past. Both history and anthropology describes human past. Diachronic studies in socio-cultural anthropology. Diachronic studies in socio-cultural anthropology are related to history. Evans Pritchard. called socio-cultural anthropology as historiography. Evans Pritchard called socio-cultural anthropology as historiography. Biological anthropology studies fossils dating to different chronologies. Studies fossils dating to different chronologies. Ethnoarchaeology studies present cultures. Ethnoarchaeology studies present cultures to fill gaps in history. To fill gaps in history. Differences. History studies the past. History studies the past and continue with the present. History studies the past and continue with the present. History studies the past and continue with the present, while anthropology studies the present. While anthropology studies the present. While anthropology studies the present and dig into the past. And dig into the past. The history is upside down anthropology. The history is upside down anthropology. Anthropology focus on prehistoric societies. Anthropology focus on prehistoric societies where there are no written records. Focus on prehistoric societies where there are no written records. Historians, next point, historians rely on secondary sources of data. Historians rely on secondary sources of data, while anthropologists use historians rely on secondary sources of data, while anthropologists use participant observation method. Anthropology studies physical and biological aspects which are ignored by history. Anthropology studies physical and biological concepts. Physical and biological concepts ignored by history. Anthropology is holistic and history is atomistic, a part science. History is atomistic or a part science. Now tell me, now compare political science and anthropology. Should we stop here? Boring, no? 1.2, 1.3, yeah. Because see, you have the same topics in 1.2 and 1.3, what we have covered in 1.1. See, the relationship with other disciplines. In 1.3, again, you will have the scope of anthropology, but in detail, like socio-cultural anthropology, biological anthropology, the same we have discussed. So I think then we'll start with 2.1 tomorrow, after completing our exercise with PYQs, right?